When Republicans say that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were engaging in corruption, what is your understanding of what the Republicans say?
Well, my understanding is that the Republicans believe that Hunter Biden was involved in kind of like shady business dealings in Ukraine.
Which no one disputes, right? We know that everyone agrees that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma. Burisma is the Ukrainian energy company.
Yes. And there's a belief that Joe Biden was sort of aware of this and was involved in some way. We don't know the exact details, which is why we need to have, congressional hearings and get to the bottom of it and possibly impeach him over it. Because the Republicans themselves, if you ask DeSantis, if you ask McCarthy, if you ask somebody like that, they would probably say, well, we don't really know the full extent of Joe Biden's involvement in his son's shenanigans. There's allegations of phone calls and that Hunter Biden has claimed various things. But from what I understand, like the Republican position has always conceded that there's a fair bit of ambiguity to this situation. And that's why we need to have congressional hearings and testimony and impeachment proceedings and all the rest of it to get to the bottom of a situation that has some degree of ambiguity.
Okay, well, sure. We should they definitely want testimony. Here's what they say happened. Yeah. Now, you stop me when you think I say something that is not verifiably true. Hunter Biden got appointed to the board of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma.
Yes.
Okay. There was a prosecutor in Ukraine, the equivalent of the attorney general, and he was investigating Burisma. According to Burisma's internal memos, he believed that they were corrupt and needed to be stopped or whatever. Some time ago.
I know, but this is worth noting that this is during the Obama administration that these alleged.
Yes, while Joe Biden was vice president. Correct.
Yes.
While Joe Biden was vice president. Exactly. That's a very important point. Okay. Yeah. So we're at that point. So Burisma's a Ukrainian energy company. Hunter Biden sits on the board of Burisma. There's a Ukrainian attorney general essentially investigating Burisma.
Yeah.
Okay. Joe Biden calls up the Ukrainian government and pressures them into firing the Attorney General of Ukraine. Do you dispute that?
From what I understand, I believe it was not the Attorney General, it was the head of the prosecution service.
Okay, whatever.
No, okay, but hold on. From what, this is relevant because from what I understand, that there was a broad consensus, like within the Western world, that this guy was bad and should have gone. That this was not some idiosyncratic position that Joe Biden was taking simply for his own self-interested reasons, that this was also the position of, the British government, the Canadian government.
Why would the US care at all about whether or not the Attorney General of Ukraine happened to be corrupt? There's there's dozens of countries where that could be the case. Why did Joe Biden call up the president of Ukraine or leadership in Ukraine and withhold $1 billion worth of IMF funds, International Monetary Fund funds, and say, if you do not fire this prosecutor who is investigating Burisma, the company that my son is a board member on, then we're going to withhold funds from you. You tell me that's just, it's unreasonable to suspect that there was a behind the scenes.
Why was that?
Can you get your dad to do that for us?
Why was that also the position of the Canadian government, that guy should be fired?
Because Canadians do whatever the U.S. tells them to, because we pay for all their security. Because we spend more than the next 9 countries. That's for real. That's not a. I mean, That's
so
not
now we're making the allegation that Joe Biden, the most powerful man in the world, was organizing.
No, vice president at the time.
Yeah. No, but this is what I'm saying, right? Like, because you're alleging that Joe Biden was sort of single-handedly coordinating this kind of like broad multi-nation.
Do you dispute that he did call? I don't know who. I don't know whether it was the president, the prime minister, or the prime minister's secretary. But Joe Biden relayed communication to Ukrainian leadership to fire the attorney general that was investigating Burisma, the company on which Hunter Biden was a board member. Do you dispute any of that?
Well, what I'm saying...
The answer is no. The answer is no, and you don't dispute it because you can't dispute it unless you live in a fantasy land. And you, JJ, are far too intelligent and charismatic to live in a fantasy land. So Hunter Biden was on the board and lobbied his father to get the prosecutor investigating his company fired, which did happen.
But I'm saying that you're making...
And Joe Biden gleeful about it in whatever that leaked email was. At the
but you're not conceding the important context. You're sort of you're positing a sort of theory of this in which the problem that the international community had with this guy didn't exist, and that the whole sort of critique of this guy was exclusively relating to the Hunter Biden situation and not some sort of like larger case against Ukrainian corruption.
I'll ask you again.
Yeah.
There's dozens and dozens and dozens of countries in the international community.
Yeah.
Why was it the United States business to withhold funds from Ukraine to fire a particularly corrupt prosecutor?
Because we care about Ukraine, right? That's the same reason why we're giving them weapons right now.
That's your theory. See, it's so interesting how the framing. Your theory is that the fact that Hunter Biden was on the board of the company being investigated by the prosecutor, that Joe Biden called up and got him fired, that those aren't related, that's some crazy hypothetical thing. It's like they talked every day. You don't think Joe Biden said he didn't know at all what his company was or what his son was doing at Burisma? Do you believe that? Do you think that's true? Do you think that's even plausible?
I'm a little uncomfortable with this entire sort of line of conversation
because you're peddling bullshit. That's why.
No. I'm less well-versed, maliciously well-informed on this subject than you are. I mean, I can only
well-informed.
That's a good
term.
Yeah, it's a term that we use in this country. Because like I don't want to have like an ignorant debate about something where I'm not armed with enough.
Fair enough.
But it's all I can say is that the argument that I've heard smarter people than me make about this particular series of events is that there is a lot of context that includes sort of a broader international consensus against the fellow that was fired, and that it wasn't just this like idiosyncratic flight of fancy that existed only in the mind of Joe Biden. And that's all I can say about that.
That's fair. That's fair. My response to that, as you know, given my skepticism of the global hegemony, is that international consensus means nothing about the morality of a given situation, because of insert every major foreign policy failure on behalf of the international consensus. See Iraq war, see Libya, insert 50,000 other interventions.
The point is just that there might be some context to this situation that you are choosing not to care about. But anyway, the point that I would make is that like,
I am too nice of a guy to not say you could be correct. I would hope that you also accept the same. You also accept the same could be true for you. You are missing important information from the Republican side that they cite that you are not necessarily looking at either. Do we agree on that?
And that's why like I'm fine with the idea of this being sort of if the Republican majority in the House of Representatives wants to have investigations on this, I think it's fair enough. I think it would be good to get some of this. I think it would be good to get some of this stuff on the record, and if they want to get Hunter to testify and whatever, that's fine.
Every day you become more and more enlightened, JJ. Do you know that you become more and more on the Council of the Enlightened Centrists? But go ahead.
But the thing is that like if this is the allegation that that Joe Biden made a bad had a conflict of interest a decade ago or whatever,
right, with a country with which we are now defending in a proxy war with Russia. Which is not an insignificant detail, but go ahead.
No, but again, it's sort of like preposterous to sort of argue that this is somehow like the seed of American Ukraine policy is sort of like Hunter Biden's shenanigans.
I think it would be preposterous to pretend that does not play a significant factor, because I want to contextualize this in the Trump conversation, because just talking about the Biden crime family, that's one thing. Okay. The reason I bring this up is because this is part of the reason why I sympathize with people who want to vote for Trump. Because I, up until about 2 hours ago, knew essentially nothing. I didn't know who Devin Archer was. Devin Archer was Hunter Biden's business partner that got him on the board in the energy company. I didn't know any of this because I don't really care that much about the play-by-play politics. But then I hear people say, oh, if you vote for Trump, you're a fascist or an artard. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to look into this shit, because I don't believe that out of the 70 million people who voted for Trump, including all the intelligent ones, that they have absolutely no argument. They have nothing to stand on. And then this whole stuff is very shady, and it at least justifies the dislike of Biden to the point where, okay, it makes sense that, geez, I understand why someone would vote for Trump.
No, but it doesn't to me, right? Because it's
That's fair. This is what we have to argue about.
But see, like the thing is, like, if you're bothered by Hunter Biden and his shenanigans, like whatever, but how can you then turn around and support Donald Trump, the man who had Jared Kushner basically running the White House for that 4-year period. Jared Kushner was, by all accounts, the most powerful man in the Trump administration.
Didn't he play a significant role in the Abraham Accords, Jared Kushner?
Yeah, he did, which should offend you as the great hater of the neocons, since that was, a real sort of deal done on Israel's terms to foster.
Well, look, I am a fan of Israel, always have been, always will be. Don't believe that they're possible of corruption. Don't even know what Palestine is. I will never criticize Israel under any circumstance. But I will say, I generally don't like countries that have an outsized influence on our internal politics because they need us for their survival, although I understand it. But certainly, I believe the international consensus was the Abraham Accords were a very good thing. Would you agree?
They were
the international consensus.
No,
he says it here. He as he crosses his head, they were a good thing. But when we're talking about the Ukrainian prosecutor, the international consensus was this man was a monster. But when we're talking about peace in Israel, it was an okay thing. I'm just saying. The frame is interesting, JJ.
No, it's not. That's not my point. Is not did Jared Kushner have no involvement in any good policy achievements that the Trump White House produced? It's just that Jared Kushner, I believe many people would argue, was a deeply compromised figure, in part because of his business dealings with Saudi Arabia, and thus the idea that someone has problems with Hunter Biden and then is going to turn around and support the Trump White House, which certainly has as many, if not vastly more, sort of compromising figures within it in terms of government corruption and special favors for family members, right? No, this is
Trump sucks. I hate Trump, and I especially hate Don Jr.
But this is the disingenuousness of the Trump supporters, right? Is that they claim they're bothered by all of these things about Joe Biden, and that's why they support Trump. But Trump has committed almost all of the exact same crimes that they accuse the Biden White House of doing.
Okay,
so it's like if
flip that right around. I agree with you. At minimum, Trump is at least as bad as Biden. At least as bad as Biden.
I think that's a very false equivalency. But even if we were to accept that as being true,
you can understand why many people in this country, given what we just talked about with Hunter Biden being on Burisma, people would have that in their mind, whether or not they've looked at every single legal.
But then why is Hunter Biden such a vastly more sort of famous and infamous character than Jared Kushner?
How about the Hunter Biden laptop story, which was suppressed prior to the election?
How much
you don't think that's a significant thing?
How much do you know about Jared Kushner, right? Like, how often do we hear stories?
I know more about Jared Kushner than apparently you know about Hunter Biden's dealings in Burisma, okay?
But why then is you not leading with Jared Kushner's stories?
I don't want to get Trump. I think Jared Kushner sucks. And like I said, I'm never going to criticize Israel because they can do no wrong and never have and never will.
But it's not about Israel. It's about Saudi Arabia. Like Jared Kushner is like, he's compromised in the Saudi direction.
Fair enough. Let's agree that there is plenty of corruption on both sides.
Like, okay, let's say for the sake of argument, okay, we went through the Trump administration. He was corrupt as hell. We went through the Biden administration. He's corrupt as hell. Okay, that is the argument. That is the argument then to maybe support one of these other Republican clowns running for president. It's not an argument to go, but no one's doing that. Trump is.
They're wrong. I know. Listen, JJ, you're talking to an enlightened centrist here. I'm aware the Republicans are wrong.
You're making the case for supporting Trump, which makes no sense at all.
No. I am explaining why.
But it doesn't make sense. You're not explaining it though, right? Because if your argument is that, Biden is corrupt and therefore we should support Trump, a man who we know is corrupt, that makes no sense at all, right? Like the argument does not flow.
I'm explaining.
How is that an explanation?
I'll tell you. I'm explaining why I think it is ridiculous to say that if you vote for Donald Trump or are considering for Donald Trump, you are mentally ill, you're a fascist, or you're retarded. I think that's absurd. That's what I'm principally against. Well, no, but hold on. Would you agree with that? Do you agree that saying
I don't use that kind of language, but
but would you say they're mentally ill or supporting fascist? If someone chooses
I don't use that kind of language. I think that there are fascist sort of adjacent people who support Trump.
Sure. And there's communist adjacents who would vote for Biden. Sure.
I mean, when you look at, you follow all these kind of like lunatics on Twitter. I don't think you see a lot of communist support for Joe Biden the way you see a lot of alt-right support for Donald Trump.
Right. The far left is far more influential in the political and cultural landscape than the far right is, bar none.
No, that's not true, right?
That's like absolutely true. Okay, hold on. This is the argument. Hold on. We've had this argument twice before. I want to.
It's an important argument to make, though, right? Like, it's an important argument. Like, if you fear, middle class societies have a lot more to fear from fascism than they do from communism.
Oh my God. If you look.
No, that's
You
true.
are a communist. I was joking about the unhinged communist, but now I'm not so sure. Communist neocon.
Middle-class
and
countries.
Donald Rumsfeld and Stalin all hang out in your imagination. It's unbelievable.
Poor countries are the ones that are at risk for communism. Wealthy countries, middle-class countries are at risk for fascism or far-right politics. And I think it is not irrational for people to be troubled by the degree of influence that the far right has within the Republican Party in a way that the far left does not have comparable influence within the Democratic Party. I think that's just a matter of objective reality.
Okay, I believe that you believe that. We will have to discuss that at a separate time because I want to get to the Trump indictments. Because I will tell you this,